All right, welcome. So today we're going to talk about absolute value equations. Now remember, absolute value just means how far a number is away from zero. That's just basically distance. Distance is always positive, never negative. So if I were to say, what is the absolute value of 2? Then you would say 2 because it is 2 units away from 0. Now if you were to figure out what the absolute value of negative 2 is, well, how far is negative 2 away from 0? 2, because it's 2 units away from 0. But in the world of absolute value equations, if I were to give you the absolute value of x equals 2, you should give me 2 solutions. Because if I were to replace this x that's inside of the absolute value sign with positive 2, so the absolute value of 2 equals 2, does the left-hand side agree with the right-hand side? Yes, because the absolute value of 2 is just 2, right? So that checks out, therefore x has to equal to 2. I'm talking about the 2 that we replace the x with. Now, if I were to replace this x, again inside of the parentheses, with this time negative 2, so the absolute value of negative 2 equals 2, does the left-hand side agree with the right-hand side? Well, what is the absolute value of negative 2? 2, right? Because negative 2 is 2 units away from 0. So that checks out, and therefore x is equal to negative 2. And these are your 2 answers that will make this statement true. So, absolute value equations. For all real numbers x and all positive real numbers a, the absolute value of x is equal to a. Therefore, the solutions are x equals positive a and x is equal to negative a. So here are the steps to solving absolute value equations. Number 1, you will isolate the absolute value expression on one side of the equation. Move anything outside of the absolute value bars to the other side of the equation. Step 2, you're going to create 2 equations. Equation 1, you're going to drop the absolute value bars, and in equation 2, you're going to drop the absolute value bars and change the sign of one side of the equation. And then step 3, you're going to solve each equation for x. So let's take a look at number 1. We have the absolute value of x minus 7 equals 5. So looking at number 1 here, we don't need to move anything outside of the absolute value because it seems like the absolute value expression is on its own on one side of the equation. So I can go ahead and proceed to number 2, which is creating the 2 equations. For equation 1, we're just going to drop the absolute value bars. So we have x minus 7 equals 5. And for the second equation, we're going to drop the absolute value bars and change the sign of one side of the equation. So we're going to write x minus 7. And since this is a positive 5, this new equation is going to become negative 5 over here. And then we're going to go ahead and proceed. We're going to add both sides by 7 for the first equation, so x is equal to 12. And then for my second equation, we're going to add both sides by 7, so x is equal to 2. So what we can do to check to see if these 2 solutions are correct is by plugging them in. So the absolute value of 12 minus 7 equals 5. 12 minus 7 inside of the absolute value is 5. So I'm taking the absolute value of 5 equals 5. Does the left-hand side agree with the right-hand side? Yes, because what is the absolute value of 5? Or how far is positive 5 away from 0? 5. So yes, that is a solution. We're good. So x is equal to 12. Let's check x is equal to 2. So I'm replacing this x with 2. So I have the absolute value of 2 minus 7 equals 5. The absolute value of 2 minus 7, that's the absolute value of negative 5. And then you're going to set that equal to 5. Does the left-hand side equal the right-hand side? Well, the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So yes, that checks out. So therefore, x is equal to 2. So you should have 2 answers when you are solving absolute value equations. Let's take a look at number 2. We have the absolute value of negative 2n plus 6 equals 6. The absolute value expression is on its own, so I don't need to move anything, but just proceed to number 2. So we have to write our 2 equations where we drop the absolute value bars for equation 1, and then for the second one, we're going to drop the absolute value bars again, but this time we're going to change the sign of one side of the equation. So we have negative 2n plus 6 equals 6, and negative 2n plus 6 equals negative 6. All right? Okay. So we're going to subtract both sides by 6. I have negative 2n equals 0. Now, if I divide both sides by negative 2, n is equal to 0. All right? And then looking at the other equation, I'm going to subtract both sides by 6. Negative 2n equals negative 12. Then I will divide both sides by negative 2. So n equals negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. So that's the other solution to this equation. So n equals 6 and n equals 0. Number 3, we have the absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals 14. So this is the absolute value expression, but it's not by itself because the 5 is in the way. It's on the same side of the equation with that absolute value of 3x. So what I need to do is I need to subtract both sides by 5 first, and therefore you get the absolute value of 3x equals 9. So since the absolute value expression is by itself now, then we can go ahead and proceed to step number 2, right? So creating the 2 equations. The first equation, we're going to drop the absolute value bars, so we have 3x equals 9. And then for my second equation, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drop the absolute value bars, but make the right-hand side negative this time, because since it was originally positive, we're making that negative now. Let's go ahead and divide both sides by 3 for the first equation, so x is equal to 3. And then for the second one, I'll divide both sides by 3, so x is equal to negative 3. So those are the 2 solutions to this equation. Number 4, the absolute value of 3x minus 9 all over 2 equals 12. Now notice that the absolute value expression is not on its own because it's being divided by 2. What I can do here is, since this is just being divided by 2, the inverse of division is multiplication. So I can multiply the left-hand side by 2, but whatever I do on the left-hand side, I got to do the same thing on the right-hand side. So I can cancel out the 2 2's, so I have the absolute value of 3x minus 9 equals 12 times 2, that's 24. So let's proceed to step number 2, creating our 2 equations. So equation 1, we have 3x minus 9 equals 24. And 3x minus 9 equals negative 24. I'll add both sides by 9 for the first equation, so I have 3x equals 33. And then I'll divide both sides by 3, so x equals 11. For the second equation, I'll add both sides by 9. So I have 3x equals negative 24 plus 9 is negative 15. But if I divide both sides by 3, x is going to give me negative 5. All right, so those are the 2 answers for number 4. Moving on to number 5. Negative 4 times the absolute value of x plus 3 equals negative 8. So you heard me, the negative 4 and the absolute value of x plus 3 are being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I need to divide both sides by negative 4. And I get absolute value of x plus 3 equals negative 8 divided by negative 4 is positive 2. So then let's write our 2 equations. I have x plus 3 equals positive 2, and x plus 3 equals negative 2. I'll subtract both sides by 3, so x is equal to negative 1. And I'll subtract both sides by 3 over here, and x is equal to negative 5. All right. And then lastly, we have number 6, which is 4 times the absolute value of 4x minus 16 equals 8. Now, what I recommend that you do first, since we're trying to get the absolute value of 4x on its own, is add both sides by 16. So we have 4 times the absolute value of 4x equals 24. And then we're going to divide both sides by 4. So the absolute value of 4x equals 6. So we have the absolute value of 4x equals 6. We're going to create our two equations. So 4x equals 6 and 4x equals negative 6. I'll divide both sides by 4. So x is equal to 6 over 4, but that reduces to 3 over 2. And then I'll divide both sides by 4 here. So I have x equals negative 6 over 4, but I'm going to reduce this fraction, and that's going to be negative 3 halves. So your two answers are x equals 3 over 2, and x is equal to negative 3 over 2. And there we go.